Welcome back to Anything You Want, the channel that pulls the curtains back and tells you what the tabloids only hint at, presenting each development with the seriousness of a court reporter and the sensitivity of a close friend. Before we begin, a quick reminder: if you value honest, in-depth celebrity coverage that respects nuance and human complexity, please subscribe, tap the join button to support our work, and leave a reaction in the comments so we know which stories to chase next. Now, settle in. Today's report concerns a star whose recent gesture has reframed public conversation about intimacy, duty, and the private mechanics of partnership. In a move that stunned followers and challenged the glossy expectations of celebrity relationships, actress Sıla Türkoğlu made public a document that normally resides behind closed doors, a legal affirmation of union that most public figures treat as intensely private. The act itself, a photograph, a brief caption, a quiet reveal, arrived without preamble, but it carried with it a weight that rippled through social platforms, discussion panels, and countless dinner table conversations. Rather than performative spectacle, the release felt deliberate and pedagogical, a carefully chosen moment intended to teach as much as it revealed. Türkoğlu did not merely display a page, she accompanied the image with a meditation on what that page means in lived reality. Her message, delivered with the half-smile of someone who understands both the demands and the comforts of devotion, reframed a bureaucratic artifact into a moral argument, that the act of binding two lives together is less about ceremony than it is about continuous labor, works of patience, daily adjustments, and mutual accountability that have little appeal in glossy magazine spreads but everything to do with the longevity of a bond. Observers noted two things almost immediately. First, the timing. Sıla's disclosure arrived at a juncture in her career when intense public attention surrounds her creative choices, and that fact alone shaped how audiences received her words. Second, the tone. Rather than issuing a defensive statement or shying away behind legalese, she spoke as if addressing a younger version of herself. Someone who might have once believed in grand, cinematic gestures and who now, by contrast, wanted to champion the quieter virtues that make relationships endure. This was not a reheated sermon about fidelity, it was a pragmatic primer on the emotional economy that sustains a couple. With carefully measured language, Sıla outlined a set of expectations and realities often left off stage. The invisible negotiation of time, the renegotiation of daily rhythms when careers demand travel, the compromise that sits behind the scenes of red carpet photographs. Her phrasing invited fans to stop imagining marriage as a climax and to begin appreciating it as an ongoing practice. The reaction was instantaneous and multifaceted. Devoted followers praised her for transparency, crediting her with modeling a form of maturity rarely depicted in youth-driven social feeds. Some commentators, particularly those whose own lives included long-term commitments, lauded the actress for reminding the public that medal-worthy partnerships usually require elbow grease rather than fireworks. At the same time, a contingent of critics questioned the wisdom of disclosing intimate documents at all, arguing that the very act of exposure paradoxically undermines the quiet foundations she sought to celebrate. It is useful to acknowledge the ecology of celebrity discourse. What a star chooses to reveal is never neutral. A private declaration staged in public reorients power dynamics. It invites interpretation, appropriation, and the occasional misreading. Yet Sıla's intervention appears to have been motivated less by spectacle than by pedagogy. Those with knowledge of her inner circle say she sensed a cultural moment in which young people equate romance with consumption and felt compelled to offer an alternative script. one where commitment is sustained through attention and labor rather than viral moments. Beneath the headline-grabbing image lay smaller, human details. In videos and in candid replies to fans, Sıla's voice sometimes trembled when she described a concept central to her message, the idea that commitment is an act of continuous consent, a repeated decision made every morning to prioritize another person within the chaos of individual ambition. This nuance was what moved many viewers. It converted a legal artifact into a lesson that could be applied by those who had never set foot in the world of show business. Industry insiders also registered the strategic intelligence of the revelation. For an artist whose calendar reads like a testament to rising demand, new shows, potential international collaborations, endorsements, the choice to speak about marriage as labor aligns with a broader branding move, transforming a tabloid-ready headline into a cultural touchstone. By doing so, Sıla shifted the conversation from gossip to pedagogy, making the discourse less about who she married and more about what marriage entails for people who both create and consume contemporary culture. Notably, the singer-actors within her peer group offered private endorsements, lauding her for refusing to perform the simplistic narratives of romantic perfection. Many wrote supportive messages acknowledging that the pressures of fame often accelerate intimate timelines in unhealthy ways and praised her for insisting upon slow, deliberate union building rather than headline-driven life changes. This inter-industry sympathy suggests that Sıla's revelation resonated beyond her fanbase and tapped into a wider professional awareness about balance, agency, and sustainable decision-making. Yet the very public nature of the disclosure created friction. Some argued that a marriage certificate in the hands of millions becomes a talisman that can be misused, misread, or weaponized by opportunistic media. Questions surfaced about consent, whether the partner named on the certificate had agreed to such a public display. To those concerns, Sıla's responses indicated that the decision was mutual and intentional, a joint act meant to teach, not to show. Whatever the case, the drama opened a conversation that circles around privacy, intention, and the ethics of visibility in an age of perpetual broadcast. The ripple effects spread across demographic lines. Younger followers, who grew up on platforms that monetize revelation, tweeted admiration for a public figure daring to model restraint and responsibility. Older observers appreciated the sincerity and seriousness with which she treated an institution often trivialized by celebrity culture. Relationship coaches and sociologists were invited onto morning programs to parse her remarks, launching panels that debated whether a single celebrity disclosure could influence public perception over the long run. As with all such moments in the celebrity ecosystem, the story remains in motion. There will be op-eds and think pieces, reaction reels and response videos, some endorsing her stance and some impatiently asking for more details. But perhaps the most interesting outcome is quieter. A modest recalibration among some segments of the public who now see marriage less as a narrative apex and more as a field of work that benefits from humility and plain-spoken honesty. Now, as ever, we turn to you, our Anything You Want family. Do you think celebrities should use their platforms to normalize the everyday labor of relationships? Did Sıla do the right thing by turning a private moment into a public lesson, or should such matters remain shielded from view? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if there's a figure you want us to investigate with nuance and respect, tell us their name. Your suggestions help shape our next deep dives. If you value the kind of careful, empathetic storytelling we bring to moments like this, please consider supporting the channel, subscribe, click join to help fund more investigative pieces, and leave a thoughtful comment so our moderators know what you care about. Your engagement turns single posts into cultural conversations. In closing, Sıla Türkoğlu's revelation is significant not because it illuminates a private contract but because it exposes a philosophy of living together that is rarely rehearsed in public, that promises are to be lived daily, that tenderness requires maintenance, and that public figures can, when they choose, teach as well as entertain. Whether one agrees with her method or not, the conversation she opened addresses a perennial human concern: how to bind personal freedom to reciprocal responsibility in a world that increasingly prizes spectacle over substance. Thank you for joining us for this extended look into a story that blends the legal and the intimate, the symbolic and the practical. If you found value here, help us continue by subscribing to Anything You Want, pressing that join button if you can, and leaving a comment below with your perspective. Which Turkish celebrities' private choices should we examine next, and what angle should we take? We read every suggestion and often build future segments from your ideas. Until the next report, this has been Anything You Want, where headlines meet humanity.